experience for modelers to improve their modeling skills. I really appreciate everybody coming. I hope you come back often. Hope you tell your friends about us and ask them to attend our shows, because I really think that it's beneficial for all modelers to learn from each other. Now I'd like to turn to Father Ron Walters, who is the Provincial Minister of Our Lady of Guadalupe, Order of Friar Minors, for our prayer this evening. Father Ron.
Sorry, we're listening.
Father Ron isn't able to be here in person tonight. We were going to run the video of the prayer, but it seems that's not possible.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
O God, as we express our creativity by creating in miniature the world around us, may we marvel at the beauty and genius which created the world and instilled in us a portion of your great knowledge and wisdom. Give success to the work of our hands, O God. Amen.
This is what I was trying to say about the uniqueness and the fun of our shows. The spotlight's supposed to be on me, not Pat, but it's still, we're enjoying Pat's lovely face right now on the screen. We just can't seem to get this show going tonight. So before we start the show in earnest, I want to introduce Andy Kinney to talk about the convention that 3 different divisions have come together to create, including a prototype group that's also involved. This is really a unique convention in Indianapolis. And I know Andy is anxious to fill you in a little bit about it. Andy?
Thanks, Jim. Actually, I have my good friend Scott Kramer here, and Scott is chairman of our convention committee, the Indy Junction 2022, and he has a lot more to say than I do, and he'll give you the grand tour here.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing tonight?
Very good.
Let me start by saying, how many of you are aware of Indy Junction 2022? A lot? A few? And how many are signed up to go? Let me give you a little background, okay? I started this with an idea about 3.5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I've always been concerned that the NMRA National Convention was too long and too expensive for a lot of people, especially a lot of young people, and it was something that needed to be addressed. And if you recall, in 2022, the original plan for the NMRA was to have the National Convention in Birmingham, England. So understanding that, we thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. Let's see if we can do something to demonstrate that there might be another model for a national convention. And I had a vice president. I was regional president of the National North Central region at the time. And I asked my VP, who handled a lot of our convention activities, if he could talk to a couple other regions and see if they might be interested in joining us. And he took that and ran with it really well. And he got it all started. And unfortunately, about 16, 17 months ago, he was ill and couldn't continue. And my time as the regional president was up, so I stepped back into the role as chairman. This convention, as was mentioned, is being put together by 3 NMRA regions, the North Central region, the Mid Central, and the Midwest regions. And that's the way it started out. Along the way, I had another idea, and that was, let me ask another question. How many of you ever went to the Chicagoland RPM meet in the suburbs of Chicago? Very many? Well, that was a meet, RPM meet that actually went on for 27 years. It was started by Martin Lofton, who created Sunshine Models, the one of the first two resin kit manufacturers, and he had it going for a long time. Martin passed away, it went to another hand, and ultimately it ended up in the last several years in the hand of a young man by the name of Mike Skibby. He's a really great guy, and he and his friends had the convention for several years. But when COVID hit, obviously that came to a halt. Excuse me. And Mike has a young family, and I knew that they had kind of run out of energy. So I called Mike January of last year, and I said, "Hey, Mike, I got a great opportunity for you. How would you like to put Chicagoland on in Indianapolis as part of our convention?" And Mike agreed to do that. And to be clear, what we have done for the railroad prototype modelers is we are creating Chicagoland in Indianapolis. They will have the same display area that they've always had. They will have the same major photo vendors there. They will have the display areas they will have the modular layouts. They will have everything they've ever had. But they can also go to the rest of it being put on by the 3 NMRI regions. And likewise, anybody in the NMRI can go to any railroad prototype modelers activity. It's totally open. So for the last 16 months or so on, I have a great team of people that have been working on this, getting it all put together. And we are just 2 weeks away from the convention, and things have come together, knock on wood, really, really well. I've got some great people. Andy is one of those people. And right now, we will have about 90 clinics presented between RPM and NMRA. We have 48 layouts. We have about 200 op session spots. We have, as I mentioned, we have photo vendors that will be open virtually the entire convention. We have a yard sale, and we will have a modest, but I think pretty well done train show where people can come and spend money. And originally the price started out at $85 for registration. We bumped it up to $95 after a period of time. And just a couple of days ago, we did our last increase. I think it's $110. Importantly, if you have a wife or a spouse of any kind, husband, wife, or kids, if you pay us another $25, you can bring your entire family, not $25 each, $25, period. And that meant if you originally put all your money down for $110, you and your entire family could come to our convention. And to be clear, there's no extra charge. That money gets you out to every single prototype tour. Well, I shouldn't say that. It gets you out to all the op sessions. It gets you out to all the layout tours. You can go to anything in there. That's it. And there is one prototype tour that there's a modest fee for. That's an Amtrak tour and so on. It also includes the train show. The point here is that we think we're providing an extremely good value. Our hotel cost is $132 a night plus taxes and so on, but that's a pretty reasonable amount. Part of the reason is that we are in a Marriott hotel, very nice hotel on the east side of Indianapolis, not downtown. There's free parking. You don't have to pay for that. And our point is that if 4 days, and our convention is 4 days long, and the point we're trying to make is that if 4 days of clinics and layout tours and train show and everything else that is available is enough for you, you can come to our convention at a very, very modest cost, much, much less than has been traditional at the NMRA National. The bottom line is we think that we're demonstrating that this is what we need to do in the future. It needs to be cost effective. It needs to offer everything it does. And that's what we're doing. I'm pretty excited about the whole thing. I think we've got top-notch people involved. The hotel is fantastic. It's big, lots and lots of public spaces that we have. We have the entire hotel. And I think everybody's going to have a great time. Any questions at all about what we're doing and why? No questions, Jim?
No, not for me.
I mean, you explained it well.
I think
What
you
are
did
the
a good job.
dates?
From my understanding, the attendance is going to be spectacular.
we are, with the registrations in hand and just a few walk-ins, we should hit 500 people.
And I also hear you covered the hotel cost for the rooms and so forth. So you're not in the hole with having to fill hotel rooms, right?
Actually, you're correct. And if you, a lot of you, if you've never been involved in a convention, one of the biggest challenges is hotel rooms, because the way it works, and I believe this works this way everywhere, is that you book so many rooms and you are responsible for filling 80% of those rooms. And if you don't, you have to pay the difference. That is a huge risk for a modest organization like we're talking about. We're talking about a commitment of $70,000, $80,000 here for hotel rooms. Now, the good news is, as it turned out, we not only filled all the rooms that we could get in the hotel, which is virtually all of them, we actually had to make arrangements with 4 other hotels for rooms there as well. They're all close to the hotel. So yeah, it's been really fantastic.
And I've talked to some of your clinicians. They're really looking forward to this. To them, this is the equivalent of being asked to do a national convention. That's how some of them are looking at this from their standpoint. And, you know, I think you really, you know, that's fantastic, Andy, that you've been able to put this group together, because you've got some really talented modelers.
Andy has done a great job. He has pulled together an incredible group of people.
Just want you to clarify what dates this is running.
Sorry, it's May 18th to the 22nd. 2 weeks from today.
Yeah.
It starts at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And we can so sign up and come to the convention.
Scott, one thing that was mistaken at the first time we came, we said you had to be an NMRA member to attend the convention. You want to correct that?
Yes, that is not necessary. Anyone that comes, anyone that wants to can come to the convention. And other than the NMRA contest, you can participate in absolutely everything we have to offer. No restriction whatsoever.
And I understand your contest room is going to be pretty crowded. I understand a lot of people are bringing models to the contest, and I think that's wonderful.
Jim, you know, I have to be honest about it. That's going to be, for me, that's going to be a real interesting experiment. For better or worse, our experience in the North Central region has been discouraging, let's say. And as the president of the region, actually about 5 years ago, I stopped all the contests at regional conventions in the NCR. And the reason I did it was straightforward. I made a very good survey going back quite a few years, and I found out that we were averaging 12 to 14 models at our conventions, and almost always awards were given to 2 people. So what I did was I actually went with the RPM model, and that was, we asked everybody to bring models to show. And we feel that it's more important to show share the knowledge of how you did, just like your program, how you did what you did, share it, more models shared with more people. And we've actually gone to the point of saying, sometimes we have door prizes. Well, if you come and you bring a model and it's a good model, not just something right out of the box, you get an extra ticket to the raffle for every model you bring in. We even tried to encourage people, and we've gone from 12 or 14 models in the display room, the contest room, to sometimes as many as 100 or more. Our region may have been different, but for that, it works. And for what it's worth, that is kind of the RPM model. If you go to RPM meets, you will find out that they don't have contests. Once in a great while, they have a popular model contest, but that would be it. So I am really, really interested to see how this all comes out, because this is a full-blown NMRA contest.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with it, because I used to really enjoy the contest room and just seeing what other people were doing and how they were doing it and what they wanted to share. So I wish you the best of it. I hope that this is just an outstanding success for you. And if this does become the model for national, so be it. I think there's a lot of people that'll applaud you for being the first to give it a try.
Well, I appreciate that. It's as all of you would probably guess, it's been a lot of work for a lot of people, And as I said before, I have some absolutely incredibly highly professional people that have made this happen. I mean, Andy has done a fabulous job on the clinics, registrant, everything. They just did a great job, and I'm really looking forward to this. I guess 2 weeks from today, so it's going to be exciting.
Hey, Jim, Andy, and Scott, this is David Vaughn. I just wanted to indicate that among those 90 clinics that are going to be offered in Indianapolis are going to be 2 that I'm going to be putting on. One of them is on the model railroad life and contributions of John Armstrong, and one is going to be an introduction to 2-rail O-scale. And in fact, included with those 2-rail introduction seminars, we're all doing 2 of them each when you sign up, are going to O-scale kits. We are so confident that people are going to be turned on by 2-rail O-scale. We're going to give out kits that people can build in order to test how good we really are. So I appreciate what Andy and Scott have done in terms of making available a broad variety of these clinics. And I'm really excited to be participating in it. I want to thank them and all of their hardworking committee for the work that they've done to bring this off. Originally, I think it was supposed to be a consolation prize for not going to England, and
Yeah.
it's turned out to be the tail that wags the dog. So bravo to you guys, and I'm happy to be participating in it.
David, I think that's fantastic. I look forward to you. I'm getting older. You might convince me to change from HO to O-scale here.
You can see the guys who are going to O-scale by looking at their bifocular glasses. So I got mine, and most of the guys here have theirs. Thank you,
Jim. One thing I should add here, and this was the result of the combination of the Railroad Prototype Modelers Conference and the NMRA. The tradition at the IRPM meets is that when the meet can afford it, they pay the registration cost of anyone who gives a clinic. And if I wanted to get the RPM people to come to this and put on clinics, I pretty much had to respect that and do that. And obviously, if we're going to do that for the people that are doing the RPM clinics, we had to do it for the NMRA clinics. So anyone that's going to come and agree to do a clinic twice gets free registration. And David, if you haven't gotten yours yet, make sure we know, and you'll get a refund on it.
Scott,
Everyone that's doing clinics is going to get free. And I'll be honest about it. We're not absolutely sure that we're going to break even. It's going to be real close. But we didn't care about making money. We cared about giving a good situation to a lot of people at a good cost, and we're willing to take that chance. So we'll see where this ends up. I think we're going to be okay. But again, making money wasn't the objective of this whole process.
we had one question.
Scott, I also had a question.
Yeah.
This is Chris Blackmore.
Go ahead, Chris.
I may have missed it, but are any of the clinics going to be available for like a YouTube video later on down the road for those of us that can't make it?
We have no plans for that.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, that's a really good question and a really, really difficult one. And one of the things that we talked to Andy about and so on is that we wanted, unless there were clinics that were just really, really, really outstanding, and even if they were available through YouTube or whatever, people would still want to see them. We were really hoping that we would get as much fresh material as possible. And the point is simple. If you're traveling all this distance to get to Indianapolis and you're paying us even a modest fee to come to our convention, we'd like you to see really new material, something that no one's seen before. And so taping these and making them available, we decided not to do that.
We had one question.
Sure.
Gentleman asked if you could put up a flyer for the convention.
I wish I had that, but I don't have that available right now. I apologize.
I tell you what, before the show ends, if you can find one, if you'll let me know, then you can put it up later. How's that?
Well, I don't have any of that right now. Actually, all the flyers.
Andy, do you have a flyer, Andy?
I'll have to check. I'm thinking I do, but let me check and I'll get back with you, Jim.
I know that we had a flyer on the first show that you all attended.
Right, and there is a YouTube channel that has everything on it. You can go on and see. If you just look up Indie Junction 2022, there are some videos that are on. There are flyers on, and they're making on the NMRA Facebook chat thing. Group. There is a whole bunch of information that's being put out almost daily.
Scott, if you or Andy one could put in the chat where to go for information, the website you have or something, so people can refer to that.
Yep, can do that.
Listen, guys, I wish you the best of luck. Thanks so much for coming back tonight and taking the time with us. I really do appreciate it, and just best of luck on a great convention.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody. You take care.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, sir. You too. Well, now I got a few announcements, and then we'll get started. You know about our Saturday shows. Scratch Building Workshop starts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's something that you'll learn an awful lot about scratch building, and I hope that you'll attend it. We have upcoming build-alongs. We've got 2 of them tonight. The next one that we have starting is Chris Courses, and he's going to be building on May the 25th, and Chris is going to be building the Kello Trolley Station. And information about that, including the discount and the code that you have to use for HO. It's you'll have to help me, Chris. I forget what the codes are.
Sorry, you caught me with a mouthful of coffee.
Okay.
Let's see. It's go to conowingomodels.com. I'll put that information in the chat. And for the discount codes for the HO scale kit, it's Jim HO. And for the O scale kit, it's Jim O.
And I hope you sell a lot of them. And I really do appreciate you naming it after me. Thank you so very much, Chris. Then on June the 1st, Bill Banner, the owner of Banner Model Works, is going to come and do an OM30 caboose, one of his kits. And that's going to be the first OM30 kit that we've done on the show. I don't think it'll be the last, but this one's going to be the first. We've got more of them scheduled. The last one that we've got scheduled is around Christmas time. So throughout the rest of the year, the summer included, you're going to see an awful lot of different kits be built from different manufacturers by different modelers. And I hope you enjoy all of them. I hope you participate in all of them. The My Build coming up, the next one is May the 18th. The sponsor for our My Build is Dan Gardy's company, Model Resource LLC. And I really do thank Dan and Amy for sponsoring this segment of our shows. Pat, would you like to run the video, please?
Just a moment.
Welcome to the world of scale, O and S railroading. We are your resource for all O and S scale modeling. Both our magazines are advertiser supported and free to read online, download as a PDF, or even print. All advertisers are hot linked to their website, so if you see something you like, just click. Please check out our websites for the current issues. All back issues available free for the O-Scale Resource and the S-Scale Resource magazines. And, if you are a manufacturer, distributor, or retail establishment, please contact us through our website for advertising opportunities.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. Chris is not going to be here for the 18th show, so Phil Edholm has volunteered to take over the running of that show on May the 18th. So Phil, do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Absolutely, Jim. So really excited about the 18th having our build along going, and I'll be actually running that. My build on the show. It's only on May 18th, so it's featuring you. So this is a great opportunity to show what you've been modeling. Just take a few pictures, send them in to me. I'll put my email in the chat right after I talk. Send them off to me. I've only got a couple of submissions, so really looking for more submissions. There's plenty of room to show what you've been modeling. Do something that show us what you've been doing either now or recently. Anyway, back to you, Jim.
Well, thanks so much for filling in for Chris on this, Phil. I really do appreciate it. And Chris will be back in June. And Chris, I hope you have a great trip in May and stay safe and come back soon. Now I'd like to start the show with Bob Farquhar giving us the quick tip for the evening. Bob?
All righty. Okay, this one's going to be about detailing like downtown structures, stuff like that. This particular example is a clothing store. You have to excuse the photographer I use because he doesn't do a good job at all. Actually, it's me. Anyway, so what I've done here is I took this from one of the model train magazines, and I can't even remember what the date was or anything like that, so I cannot give credit to the person that has put it in the magazine in the first place. But what I did, I took a picture of this with a regular camera and put it on PowerPoint and shrunk it down to HO scale. So then what I did, I just cut out all the various things. These are showing it being glued onto the back of the piece of cutout. And that, of course, ties and a suit jacket and so on. So I put them on a block of wood. Again, there's a photographer not paying attention to focusing. But I put this into two of these. You'll see that in a second. And scanned the internet for pictures of haberdasheries and got this picture here. So that became in the back of this storefront. And this is these two pieces with all the shirts and so on there. So what you can do is you can get different, just search the internet, whether you want a bakery or, clothing stores, things like that, get some ideas or cut them out and use that type of thing. There's another example of food store and another bakery type of thing. Okay, that's the end of my quick tip.
Well, thank you so very much for filling in this evening for Paul. I hope he gets better soon and gets over his COVID. And from what you indicate, he seems to be much better, and hopefully he'll be back shortly.
Right on.
But thanks again. I really do appreciate it. And now, somebody that you've seen several times on our show. In fact, this is the third build-along that Rick and Marie Hunter have done for us. And I really do appreciate that, Rick, Marie. But they're building, again, a Hunterline 50-foot covered railroad bridge. And I really do think that it's coming along beautifully. And I will turn it over to you two nice people.
Hi, Jim. Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. We're Rick and Maureen from Hunterline. And what we're doing is our build along is building our Queen Post covered bridge. The one that we're doing here is the S scale one, so that it's big enough that everybody can see. If we did the N scale one, we'd have to have a lot of magnification to get it. Somebody said last week that they wanted to see the N scale one. Well, we do have them. It's on a little layout, so we can't get the whole layout up here. So this is our session 6. We only have one left next week, and that should be the finish of it. So this is putting on our roofing material, okay? We're putting on sheathing, and we're putting on our shakes. Now, our shakes, we searched the world, and we could not find anybody that made the shakes that we wanted. So, and sitting down with ITLA, we came together with them and we produced our own shakes. Now, these are basswood shakes, except for N scale, because we couldn't get wood thin enough for N scale. But you'll see in this video that exactly how we put them on. There is tricks to it. And one of the big tricks is don't stain them first. They'll just work. So stain them afterwards. You'll see. Okay, if you want to roll the video, please. Hi, everyone. You're with Rick and Maureen from Hunterline in Cambridge, Ontario. We're doing our 50-foot Queen Post covered bridge. We hope everybody that's participating is keeping up with the demand for the time that it takes. Today we want to get the roofing started. So one of the things a roof needs is sheathing. So our sheathing is just a strip of very, very thin basswood. And Maureen's going to show you exactly how to put that on.
Thanks, Rick. I put one side of the roof on already, just so you could see it's all set up, and I've started to trim some of the excess shakes that are overhanging the sheathing, and I'll show you how I did that in a little while. In the instructions it says to put the sheathing on both sides of the roof before you start the shakes, and I just decided because of the video to do one side of the roof, and it worked really well, so you could do it either way really. So you've already got your one side of the sheathing stained. That was to be done last week, so it's nice and dry. It's still a little bit warped, but it'll work itself out after we get it glued to these rafters. So what you need to do is just measure that sheathing. You want it to overhang the gable ends just ever so slightly, and a little bit overhang past the bottom of the rafters here. So just get a pen or pencil and put the it's not even 1/8 of an inch, it's just ever so slightly over the end of that gable, and put a little mark there, and I'm just going to measure in how far that is. Okay, and then on the other end, look at that. You can draw a line, or you can just use your sharp X-Acto knife to cut that, and that's what I'm going to do.
Don't do the fingers.
Yeah. Give it a couple of good slices, and then it usually breaks off pretty well. Okay, so we've got the width is done, and you want that to meet up with the other sheathing on the other side, just to make a little bit of a point, and then measure the width of it just beyond that rafter. And I'll just measure that.
One of the things you're trying to accomplish here is that the peak of the roof is pretty stable all the way across from one side to the other side. It'll come into play a little later when we put the ridge board on the end. You'll see when we get that far.
So just score that. Trouble with a plastic ruler is I usually take off a little bit of the plastic ruler. I think that's probably enough. It's pretty thin, so it breaks pretty easily for that little piece. So I would use the factory side of that sheathing to butt it up against that the top peak of the roof, and I think it's pretty good. I think that might still be a little bit long on the end.
Is that the stained side or the unstained side?
Yeah, this is the stained side, so that goes underneath when we glue it on. I'm just going to take a little bit off my end. It was a little bit wide or long. So that's better. And you can kind of tip it over and see how your edges along the rafter, and it looks pretty good. So what you want to do, you're going to glue that sheathing to the roof with the stain side down. Okay, I've got one.
We stain the one side first because it's really hard to get your hand in there to stain the underside. So stain it before you put it on.
I've got one little part here on the eave part of this sheathing that's not quite straight. Not that it's going to matter too much because your shingles or your shakes are going to overhang that. So what you want to do is get your glue. And put glue all along those rafters. You have to work kind of quickly because there's a lot of them. You just want to make sure that you've got all the surfaces covered so that sheathing will adhere to it really well. You might see that you've got a couple that are loose, so if you do, just go back and put a little glue on that underside where it attaches to the top sill of the wall.
That applicator is good for doing this, eh?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then take that sheathing and again take the manufactured length of that sheathing, whoops, stain side down, and attach it to the roof. And what you can do is I take a ruler or something that you can put across that sheathing, and a couple small clamps, and just clamp it at each end to kind of grab on here. So wherever you can find a spot to clamp that, ever so carefully.
Just helps that it doesn't bubble up in the middle.
So that looks pretty good. And you need to just have a look at it, make sure that it looks like it's adhering and it looks good. So I would just let that set up, you know, good 10 minutes. But while you're waiting to do that, what you can do is get your shakes out and start popping all the shakes out.
So let's talk about our shakes. Our shakes are basswood shakes. Nobody around that I could find anywhere in the world made the shakes that we wanted. These are very prototypical. Some people say, oh, they're way too big. You got to remember, this is back in the 1800s. So I did some studying on how they made the shakes at that time. And usually what they did was just take a hunk of wood and like a log and put a wedge in it and then whack it down. And whatever fell off, that's what the shake was. So they're all different thicknesses, they're all different lengths and so on. So we wanted that very random look. And one of the ways, if I can show it here, one of the looks we were after was this look right here, where each layer shows. So you can see, like Maureen just popped those off. One of the neat things about these, there's no waste, virtually no waste, because what you cut off one, you just use it for the next one.
Just take them off very carefully and don't damage the outside of the sprue of shakes, because you're going to use the thickest, the widest margin on the edge for your spacer on the roof. You need 4 of them for your roof. So just, you know, cut 4 of them off like that and set them aside, because you're going to put them down at the bottom of your roof.
We put those on the bottom. It's called a starter strip. That sets the angle of where the shakes are going to sit because of the overlap of each course going up the roof. So we first started just using one of them, and we thought, okay, after doing a few, that the first course still isn't on the right angle. So if you do 2 of them at the bottom, that sets the angle for the rest of the project.
So just clean up those shakes a little bit, take off the excess wood. You can tell what's not supposed to be there. I usually cut off all the little knobbies too where they're attached. I don't know that that's a big deal, but...
Now we notoriously do not use any laser cut products except for this. This is the only one that we have that's laser cut, and it's Imagine That Laser Art that does this for us.
And remember, don't stain your shakes before you put them on.
If you stain them first, they're going to warp all over the place. So as you can see, the side that's already done, they all lay very flat, and they're all glued on there very strongly, so that when we stain it afterwards, there's not much of a chance of warping. If one does warp, actually that looks good.
So you've got your 2 strips that you're going to use as your starter strip. You've taken the widest margins off of your shakes, and we're going to measure those. So you just want to measure along the bottom of your roof, one end to the other. Just get your pencil and mark it. If it's a little bit bigger, that's okay, you can trim it off later. So just cut that, and the other one, because you're going to do 2. And you're going to glue them together. So you want to get your glue again and just glue it right from one end to the other. And then get your other starter strip and put it on top of that one. Even it out. Fingers get a little bit full of glue doing this. So that's really tacky. It's going to set up nicely. And I think the sheathing hopefully is attached pretty well, and it looks good. So what you want to do is put this starter strip on. So just take your glue again right along the whole length of that sheathing, and take the starter strip, put it right to the edge, right to the bottom of that sheathing.
You should do a shout out in Strasbourg.
It's overhanging a little bit on that end, at the gable ends, but that's okay because you're going to trim that with the excess shakes that you have later once it's all set up and dry. There, so you've got your starter strip on there. And now what you're going to do just kind of, while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to get yourself a little lid or something that you can pour quite a bit of glue in, because this next part takes quite a bit of glue. So give yourself a good amount. Get yourself a cheap brush, usually a flat one is great, and you're going to want to put the glue on the roof so you can put your shakes on. And I usually just put enough for one course. So just...
If you don't know what a course means, that's one row all the way across. It's the same as bricks and just about anything in the building trades. It's called a course.
So right along your starter strip, and enough on the sheathing to attach those shakes.
What I was mentioning about to scale, the thickness of these is about, it can range from, maybe 1 3/4 to 2 inches thick. That's how big they were when they were made back in the 1800s. Everybody says, oh, they're supposed to be nice and even and really thin. That is a 20th century way of doing it, not a 19th century. So you see how quick they can go.
So what you want to make sure of is, I usually put the burnt side up so that you can see the varied colors in the shake. Just adds a little.
So that's an important point. That we always do burnt side up, so that it just gives variances of colors.
I'm trying to get this first course on, and then I'm going to clamp it and let that set up before I start the rest of it. It's really important that you get that first course on there.
Now they should overhang enough that you can't see the starter strip.
Mm-hmm.
So that the shorter shake itself should not be under the starter strip. It should be up over it, just slightly.
So you can just turn it upside down and have a look and just make sure it's just extending over that starter strip. So you can see that they're starting to lift up, but once you get that first one down, it seems to go a lot better. So I'm just going to take my ruler, or if you've got a piece of metal or a metal ruler that's that long, it would be great too. And then just clamp it. I've got some nice little clamps here that work well. And
see, if you stain them ahead of time, the work would already be in it, and now you're fighting against the work. While when you do it this way, it doesn't get a chance to work.
And what you want to do too, just as a reminder, is when you're putting the shakes across, you're gonna vary where you put them. I'll show you that when we come back. But we're going to pause for a few minutes now to let this set up, and then we'll come back and continue on with the rest. Okay, so that has set up.
This is different when you can pause it.
Yeah.
Like when you're live, you don't have this capability.
So you want to start the next course. So you want to take your glue and put it right down to that the start of the tab on that shake that's already there, and a little bit onto your sheathing above. So go right along the whole width. I can see I didn't let it glue up well enough, but that's okay. It's pretty good. And when you put this next course on and all the way up, you need to stagger them so that your next course does not end on the same seam as the previous course, if that makes sense. So you can see my seam is here, there. I'm going to take my next course, my next shake, and put it spanning over that seam. And you want to bring the bottom of your shake right down to that tab. You can come right to the point where you see the cut ending, or you can leave a slight little space. I like to come right to the cut.
If you put them too close together, you're not going to have enough material to get to the top. And if you put them too far apart, it makes it look not the way it should look.
When you get to each end at the width of it, just want to bring this down a little bit. You just take your shake and put it on and just snap it. Snap it at the widest part, because you can always trim off any excess later.
That's why we say there's no waste with this system.
Yeah. So this end, always trying to keep that burnt side up.
Now the HO, the S, and the O scale standard gauge and narrow gauges are all using basswood for the shakes. Our N scale, we can't get basswood sheeting thin enough to for what we want for the prototype size of the thickness. So there we use a laminate. It's a birch laminate. It should all work out the same for staining and for gluing.
So just continue on with your shakes here, putting them on, each course the same as the last, just staggering them, and you'll know when you have to clamp again, because they won't be adhering. They'll be starting to lift up and warp a little bit. So then that's a good time to stop and get your ruler out or something else that you can put over top of them and clamp them. And I think maybe we'll stop there again for a little bit. I'm going to finish these courses right to the top to show you what we do at the very top. Okay, so we're back, and I've got my ruler across those courses that I put on, the shakes, and I've used these clamps. These clamps are great.
Needle nose clamps.
Yeah, they're quite long, and you can stick them right up under the roof rafters, and it holds it in place really well. So I just wanted to show you that. The part we're at now is we've got all the shakes right to the top. Okay, what we need to do is now place another course, but I have to trim it back a bit because it's going to be too long at the top. So I'm just going to take, I know that it's not very much to take off, just a little bit of a sliver. So you need to just kind of measure and trim off the excess. So you'll want to do that right across the board. Just a little bit. Get 3 of them here. Okay. And get your glue. Still not quite dry enough. But we're going to clamp it again.
You can see by using the burnt side, you can see that there's already a color variation in each shake.
So take the ones that you've cut, lay them next. If you have any glue oozing out, you can just go back with your tweezers and get it off. So that's kind of butting up against the other side of the roof. This one's a little bit long, so I'll have to trim that one off later. And you can see that there's still a lot of white space there. So you still have to put another row of shakes on there, because you're going to end up putting the ridge board on, and you want the tabs of the shakes to be sort of right in line with that ridge board. So just take a shake and kind of look as to how much you're going to cut off. And it's going to be very close to where the tab starts. So you want to do this very carefully. Take your X-Acto knife and just your metal ruler and cut just above where the tab starts. So you want to cut enough to go across that roof. I'm just going to show you where you would place it. I'm going to stagger this one a little bit. So it's like that. You can see that. So you can see at the top of the roof, there's enough room for that ridge board to go there. And that'll look really good. You can see that kind of hard. Something like that. But we're going to pause again. I'm going to get those last two courses on where I have had to cut the width of them. Let it set up really well, and we'll come back and we'll put the ridge board on, and I'll show you how I trim off the excess shakes on the sides at the gable ends. Okay?
It's amazing how you can do 2 or 3 hours of work all in a fraction of a second through videos.
So we've got the shakes all set up here pretty well. You're going to find that you're going to need at least a couple hours for it to get to the point where you can start to file the peak in the roof and also cut off the excess shakes on either end of the gable. So this has been sitting for a couple hours now, and what you want to do is take your file and just file the top. You know, there's sometimes maybe a few cuts of your shakes that are kind of protruding up a little bit. You just kind of want to make it smooth all the way along. Both sides. Flip it over this side. You want to kind of go in the direction towards the peak, and you won't damage your shakes. You might still see a little bit of warping.
And that's okay.
But that's okay. You'll find that this is probably the trickiest part of the whole build, is getting this roof on there. The secret really is to find a way to clamp those shakes down and until they set up. So that looks pretty good. And we want to cut off these shakes because they're protruding quite a bit. You can see they're past the sheathing. So usually I turn the bridge over. Make sure you can see that. Get a really sharp X-Acto knife. Put a little bit of pressure on your bridge, not too much. And just start cutting it away.
There's a lot of layers there, so you might have
Yeah.
to just work at it a little bit.
You just have to go easy. You just want to go a little bit beyond that sheathing.
Yeah, it's okay to stick out just a fraction of an inch.
So just work at it. I think when you're clamping that roof, if you've got something that's metal, like a thick ruler or a piece of metal that's the width of that roof, if you can lay it across and then clamp it down to the rafters carefully, it really helps. I used a ruler and clamped it, and that works pretty good. Okay, so this is almost off. There we go. So it's just, if you can see there, it's just, let me see that, just a little bit past that sheathing, and you can still work at that and trim it off a little bit if it's still protruding, and then just do the other end as well. And I think that's probably all we're going to have time for tonight. We'll have to put the ridge board on next week. So that's
one of the big aspects here is to let all those shakes dry.
Yeah, give it a good 24 hours. And then we can start, you can put the ridge board on, and that's where the ridge board is going to go, up at the top. And we'll maybe do that next video.
Okay.
So I think that's it.
Okay, this sounds good. We have one more session left to go.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, it's starting to look great, eh? Like, wow.
Thank
okay,
you.
Thanks. See you next week. Hi, Jim.
Maureen, thank you so very much. That was just great.
Thank you.
That was full of a lot of technique stuff. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what we wanted, Ray. I mean, I think it's beautifully done, and can't wait till next week to see the rest of it.
That's great. Thanks for all the comments, guys. We kind of don't do the chat while we're live.
Our eyes aren't that good.
And we can't do two things at once. So thanks, Jim. We'll see you next week to finish this off.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Well, now I'd like to turn to Jim Murphy, who's building Dave Vaughn's kit, Wit and Wisdom model of John Armstrong's diner called Nighthawk Cafe. So, Jim, welcome. Jim, I don't hear anything.
Jim, turn on your speaker.
My apologies there. View of the inside, showing the details and the overhead lighting as it splays out like a spider.
We're not
Jim,
seeing
you're
your
sharing.
video now,
You're
Jim.
sharing. Yeah, we're not seeing what you're sharing. There you go. Open that up.
There we go.
And why don't you click that little bar on the bottom right, the little arrow that's at a 45-degree angle? That'll make it full screen. Over far to the right, slide over to the right. That thing. Click that. There
Okay,
you
let
go.
me just back up just a hair here.
Yeah,
Yep.
just start over, Jim. Let's
There we
try
go.
to-
There we go. Yeah. And
Hit that arrow over on the right, the full screen arrow. That one there.
there we
you
are. All right, let me. There.
It's going.
Ah, there we are.
Is your speaker on there?
A view of the inside showing the details and the overhead lighting as it splays out like a spider over the top of the characters. These are individual LEDs that are run through from a common source. We're going to be using these LEDs throughout this building because they run on 3.3 volts. This allows us to use LEDs and not have to worry about resistors. By using LEDs, I put a aluminum foil reflector in the top of the ceiling, so the 3 bulbs gives you an incredibly bright light. The new LEDs are very, very bright, and with a small amount of voltage, 3.3 volts, quite a bit of light. Here's the light reflecting off the inside of the roof, and we're to the cafe diner on the left and the main body of the structure on the right. This is what we're going to be parking up. Okay, we come in from the outside like so many utilities, in this case underground. I like using self-adhesive copper strips instead of wire. They're excellent for fitting underneath a building foundation. They're very, very thin, and they allow you solder points. This electrical copper is available from places like Micromark and Digitrax, and it's self-adhesive like a tape on one side and bare polished copper on the other side, and it makes it very convenient for making connections throughout the building. Here it comes inside the building where it makes connection, and I start by running a couple of leads. Remember, keeping plus and minus is extremely important with LEDs. They won't light if you have them reversed. Start by soldering a couple. Here's the entrance to the corner of the building. I put a little tiny plus mark on it to look at the bring that wire in. It doesn't have to be flat strip. In this case, it's solid copper wire for your basically your entrance wire. Once I come inside the building, I build a harness out of phosphor bronze wire. This allows me to run my electrical throughout the building just like everyone does in their home. By pre-soldering these pieces, it avoids the confines of having to work inside the building. Here we are in the annex building. You see the 2 bus wires are coming across the first floor ceiling. They've come up through the back, and now I have a plus and a minus for distribution. We talked a lot about soldering. Here is my go-to soldering station. It's not the most inexpensive unit. It's a good weller, but I've got my temperature adjustment, heat. I've also got a brass copper scrubber. This is the best thing in the world for scraping off your soldering tips to keep them clean. It's available from all Walmarts in Mississauga and your local grocery store. 39 cents in the States, about $4 in Canada. These are real cheap. Also, soldering tip cleaner is very important. We're going to be doing a lot of soldering here. So tin it with the tip cleaner. This keeps it bright. Don't use sandpaper. Don't use steel wool. Use soft copper and this tip cleaner for renewing the flux on the end of it. These LEDs are made in China. They're designated as 0402s. That's the size in millimeters, which in US is micro tiny. The 0402s, these are available in white, warm white, and they are set. The leads on these and the upper ones you don't have to unsolder, so that's everything you need to put it together. The leads on the larger LEDs, although they're brighter, the leads do have to be stripped of their insulation. Easiest way, as I learned this from Bell Canada, is a sharp pair of scissors and just gently drag the plastic wire through it. It's perfect for removing insulation from 30 thousandths or 30 gauge and lower wire. Use solder flux to tin the ends of this very fine wire. Get a little solder on those beforehand, tin them, and then you're ready to apply them to the bus bars, and they'll get the other locations all taken care of for you. Here I've got the bus bars running up from the ground floor up to the second floor, as you can see on the left. They take a right. All my ugly soldering is hidden behind a view block. And then I bring these very fine wire, I believe it's number 38 magnet wire. And that wire is so thin that when you apply flux to it, it can just melt through. It doesn't have to be stripped or strained. A little solder paste and a warm iron, and it melts off the insulation, giving you a good connection. You are actually pursuing soldering. It. And the point here is solder paste. Solder. Don't try to take the insulation off. It melts right off. And when you hook a battery to it and everything is ready to go, when you finally make contact, got a good solder joint without having to inspect it. And the wire is so thin, you can position it anywhere you want to. On the back side, we've used some translucent photos that show the inside of a storefront. Those require a nice bright LED directly behind them, like a rear projection screen. And with those lights in there, you can see the front of the photograph covering the window, a slight bow in it. And when you backlight it, that image will show through the storefront and give you a nice simulation of interior detailing without having to do a lot of work to it. This is an example of a City Classics. I believe it's a general store. And the center section is of the storefront, and that is backlit. On the left-hand side are a set of stairs added in, and there is a soft transom there. The side view of the same building showing the storefront illuminated and the back wall also illuminated. Here, by using view blocks and baffles, you get the impression that it's a lived-in building. Here's the side view of the annex building, again with an illuminated storefront that's run by a photograph, and the right-hand side where the view blocks looks like a separate building. And that's again got LEDs in it. We'll open that up to take a look inside. Here's the end view of that men's store. All it is a single LED illuminating a translucent photograph, and it gives you a completed interior without a lot of detailing, and you can move a bunch of these. Here's the bent photograph shown in front of the door. So the rear lit comes through and shows the front as being occupied through that bay window door in the front of it. The individual lights behind that photograph are shown here. They're quite bright. All you need is a single LED. It lights up the photograph and also provides lighting to the door shown on the left. And all I've done is smear a little paint there so it doesn't hurt. The individual lights in the upper room are single LEDs 0402s mounted on the magnet wire, and those can be positioned after they're set on the bus bars. Just move them anywhere around the room. As long as the light itself, like you see here, is above the eye angle that you're looking at. You're looking down on the building, but keep those bulbs above the tops of the windows and you get a nice effect. On the extreme left, you see the view block effect. Now comes the cheapest way to build these. These are 0402s that I've soldered myself. They're very handy. These are less than a penny a piece in 100 quantities. And all it takes is a little finesse. Don't be afraid of soldering. Take yourself a titchy lampshade, slide it over after the solder joint has been made, apply some glue to the back side. They're small, but you can handle them. Once you've got the bulb slid through the shade, give it a coat of glue, and afterwards a coat of paint. I also like to take either clear nail polish or some clear epoxy and put that over the bulb, and you get a very nice parabolic shaped reflector that'll work really, really swell. Here's that same lampshade just built in position, and in a darkened room, it gives us wonderfully realistic effect and a good HO scale sized light here on the back door. Very effective. Looking at the side door, you'll notice that that's got a light recessed up in the covey of the door, and that gives a very nice subtle effect to the end wall. Behind the wired bricks and the yellow light, here we are looking at the top of the loft, and the on the right, you'll probably notice the Barber Pole. I'm gonna give you a little more detail on that in just a minute. What's a picture without a lighted Barber Pole? That light that we saw on the inside wall is a simple LED taped to the top, sealed with a light block, and that creates that nice shadowy effect of a lit doorway at night. Once you've tested them, you see that it does glow a little bit through the top, but it gives most of the light is from the outside, and it gives you a nice effect of glowing in that doorway. We'll be mounting a couple of figures in there, and it'll be very, very effective. Here's the front view of it, the recessed lighting, very typical of New York City apartments back in the day. Gives you a good flavor for the town. Inside the building, coming up from the bus bars, randomly located LEDs. These are just mounted on their own leads. I give them a twist with a wire wrap tool, and that gives you a nice stiff status. Again, the side view here, one of the lights has come down a little bit, so it's kind of unrealistically showing up there. But as you work with these, then you know to go in there and just raise that light bulb just by tugging on it, and it'll be in fine shape. Here, the light bulbs are recessed up there, and you get a nice reflection in the rear window of the Nighthawks lighting up that. Notice the way the light cascades onto the sidewalk, just as it happens in the painting. And the same effect you want to have here with the lights coming in and bringing out the character, setting the mood, bringing you back to 1942 and what's going on in at the late night. A very nice effect. Here's the side view of the light is spilling out of the installed front entrance. That was added in to give you a complete effect of it. And the building above shown in the background. No curtains yet. Now, one of the nice features of the painting called Sunday Morning, 1926, was the barber pole out in front. A little bit different mounting than the kit has. It's a freestanding barber pole, and it's what better is to illuminate that too. Here's the specs on the brighter LEDs. It's still an 0402, but these are bright whites, and they're called a Pico sized LED. Very, very fine leads, but a very high brightness. So I'm going to take apart the barber pole that came with it. It was a resin casting. I'm going to save the top and the bottom, and we're going to discard the center section. Here I'm using my Micromark miter box, worth its weight in gold. Very, very handy tool for working on, very small. Then get out my masking tape, and this is showing here how I take very, very thin masking tape, and I'm going to be using this to wrap around a piece of tubing to make my barber pole. Here I've wrapped it and painted using the masking tape. Paint 3 colors on it, and as long as you're doing it, do a big piece. Then slice the pieces of the barber pole into the right length. So I'll have enough barber pole to do about, I don't know, half a dozen. Stick the LED inside the translucent tube. This is just white evergreen styrene tubing, and a pin to hold it in position, and the leads coming out the bottom to give you the lit up barber pole. Very effective. Here it is mounted outside the barber shop, just like the the painting. And we'll be using this as we get. Notice that we have not yet added the glazing or the final position for the barber pole. That will be coming when the sidewalk is in place and after the glazing is in place. All that will be finished off, and we'll have curtains in the upper rooms, some interior detailing on the building interior and on the front to give us the names more closely to the same. Here's a teaser. Up in the left-hand corner, it's taken it a step beyond, and we are putting the electroluminescent sign up, and we've christened the name of this diner the Nighthawks.
Shit.
Electroluminescent is available from Miller Engineering. Here's an experimenter's kit. It consists of a big sheet, well, it's about 4 by 6 sheet of material. As long as you have, it can be cut into smaller pieces, as long as you have the 2 leads anywhere on there, you'll get electroluminescence. Here I've cut out a piece already. There's still plenty of material to go around, especially in HO scale. So I've got plenty to work with. And we're going to be taking and making a sign for the front of this, and then plugging in, this is the electroluminescent material with the battery supply. Word of caution, that goes in at 4.5 volts and comes out at 130 volts AC. Okay, but when you put your fingers on the leads, as I did, you will say, oh, that's got some kick to it. Then to make the sign itself, this is printed on translucent paper. Those of us who remember overhead projectors and saved a few pieces of that material. And this was printed on translucent material, and then that's going to be our sign basis. Once the sign is cut out, you want to cover up the backside. I used a PSA and a piece of cardstock to cover the unused side, and glue those two pieces together. You'll notice that just the two pins are all that needed to be connected. Now we're looking at the backside, and that's just for cosmetics. So it doesn't look like it's unfinished on the back there. But those two pins are where we're going to connect the power supply that comes with the kit. For others, the power supplies are available separately. And then we have the finished sign, the Nighthawks, along with the simple border put on. On the right-hand side, the border had to be a little bit thicker, but it isn't hardly noticeable. And then you have the two pins that will connect the 130 volts to. I ran a wire inside the building and then back out again. It's just a simple two number 28 wires. This is cut from an old piece of cable. Doesn't have to be very heavy. And that gets us to the outside of the building. On the inside, I come through the wall with those same wires. Again, no polarity in AC. Use a little bit more of the soldering paste. Apply that to the pins that come out of the sign, and then make the holes just large enough to be able to put them back in. Here they are, soldered up, some nice clean joints, doesn't take much. Good soldering practice will bring you into position here. And then put the sign into the holes in the wall, draw the wires back through, test fit, and you have the finished Nighthawk sign set into the wall behind the new lights. And this will bring us to a close on our lighting presentation for this evening, and we have to look for. Well, are there any questions about the Greenwich Village in 1942? Some of you may remember it. You're smiling, Jim.
Yes, absolutely. That's great work. I love the sign that you made. I think that's just outstanding and really something unique for the building.
I love the industrial light. I'm definitely going to have to do that. The light over the door. It's just fantastic. How are you powering all of those LEDs?
All the LEDs right now, I'm using what you see is not a 9-volt battery. It is a 9-volt battery, but from a device that you clip on from engineering, and it's a current limiter. What kills LEDs is not the voltage. It's the current. They are very current sensitive. And all of these tiny little LEDs take more than 20 milliamps and sometimes less, which is a tiny amount of current. And this little device, it was about $10, snaps on any 9-volt battery, and it limits the current that can be put out. So it tests the LEDs, and that's what I'm going to do it. As I'll show you next week of a more permanent 3.3 volt power supply, which is called a buck and boost. And you can put 9 volts, 12 volts, 16 volts AC. You can put your Lionel transformer on it, and it will provide 3.3 volts. So you don't have to bother with a lot of resistors on your LEDs. You see that a lot of applications. You got to go find that 470 ohm resistor and protect your LED. If you don't go over 3.3, you're fine. Hang on as many as you want on that. And when you're getting 50 LEDs for a couple of bucks, you don't hesitate to just put on as many as you can.
Jim, you did a beautiful job. I really do appreciate it. and look forward to next week.
Very good.
Well, now I'd like to turn to our featured modeler tonight, Gary Rushton, who owns Fun Factory Vintage Trains. And I really think you're going to enjoy meeting Gary because he has done some unique things, I think, in his model railroading career. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about some of them. So, Gary, welcome.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate the invite to be with you guys here tonight. And I learned a few things in your segments, so that was kind of fun. It's still not me, I think, but on the screen, but I don't know what's going on. Jim, you can kind of take care of the technical end of it, right?
I don't know what's going on either, but it's been going on all night. So I'm assuming that Phil or Pat or
there we go.
There we go. So it'll get straightened out. This is, like I say, this is a fun show. I never know what's going to happen, and we just go from there. Gary, I know you've got a PowerPoint that you'd like to show us tonight. But before you do that, would you like just to talk a little bit about yourself and who you are and why the company was started and that kind of thing?
Sure. I'll kind of cover some of it in my PowerPoint, but I actually all started with my grandfather back in Pennsylvania. He was a coal miner in a small mining town in Pennsylvania. And his father before him was in that same town. And they always used to put up their Lionel trains for Christmas. And I'm sure everybody's got memories of those. But the cool thing was his originally were from the early 1900s when Lionel first was doing standard gauge and then obviously into O gauge. And we had pictures of, Grandpa's elaborate trains on platforms around the Christmas trees and all that stuff. And we just kind of grew up with those memories. And my grandparents would buy us the Lionels for Christmas each year. And so it just became a part of our lives. And fast forward, the pandemic had hit. My mom was at home and was bored and decided she was cleaning her basement and said, "You boys need to get all these trains out of here." So we went and started going through everything because we used to spend hours and hours in our basement as kids playing with these, O gauge trains and just abusing them and beating them up, but having an amazing time. So those are some good memories of being a kid. And fast forward again to the pandemic and mom wanting her basement clean. We went over and got all our stuff and decided, boy, these need to get fixed up. I mean, just for ourselves to use or around the Christmas trees. And all of a sudden it morphed into so much more. And it developed into service and sales and restoration projects. And we'll talk about, Hollywood calling and movies and all kinds of fun stuff. But I really credit it all with my grandfather. I'll show you his tool chest, as well as I still use some of his tools. I've got the old Lionel service station manuals and all those good things. So we'll take a look at that stuff. And, stop me during the presentation if you have a question, Jim. If anyone out there has a question or wants clarification, feel free to stop me. I just progress through it by clicking, so it's not on a timer or anything.
That's fine. Why don't you go ahead and start your presentation and we'll go from there.
All righty, let's get going here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here we go. You have to move your screen over because I can't see it. There we go. So again, the name of our company is Fun Factory Vintage Trains. We do sales, service, restoration projects. We specialize in Lionel O gauge and MTH products. Obviously the Lionel stuff from 1900 through the modern era. So some of the things we do, I'll first give you a history of Fun Factory Vintage Trains. Like I said, it kind of started with my grandfather. I have a deep, abiding respect and interest in history. I love the fact that I can restore something that's 100 years old and put it back on the rails and have it work, which I think is something awesome and something not too many manufacturers can claim. So I think that's a claim to fame for Lionel. So I love that part of it. I love researching the history of it, what made Lionel produce what they did, when they did, and what kept them from producing things like during World War II, and magnets during Korea and things like that. So these are just some shots of Christmas time and Lionel electric train displays from the 20s and 30s. And then the factories. Enthralled with, first of all, the amount of people they employed and the way the Lionel factories were created, and how they became a huge part of Americana that has developed into, I think, so much more with HO scale and S scale and what you guys do so effectively, the modeling. I think a lot of it can be traced back to those early days of Lionel and Joshua Cohen. So these are just some fun pictures of the factories. We'll move along here. So I came up with our name from Joshua Lionel Cohen. This is a quote of his from the 1917 Lionel catalog. And back in those days, to market Lionel trains, you could take a tour of the factories. And during that time, Cohen named his factories the Fun Factory. So that's where our name came from. There's Mr. Cohen there. And then this is a brief description. There's a great book out on Lionel and the Fun Factories. This is a pictorial of all the different factories, starting first in New York, progressing through the heyday in New Jersey and into Michigan, and then settling back on the East Coast now. So it's just an amazing history and a long, long history. So, and like I told Jim in the beginning, my roots are in Pennsylvania. So the Pennsylvania Railroad was huge for us. It was the lifeline of the little coal mining towns. And in particular, my grandparents and my mom was born in Sagamore, Pennsylvania, which was a mining town owned by the railroad. At that time, it was the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh Railway, the BR&P, and they also owned the coal mine. So they'd build these company towns and they'd take the railway in and they'd mine the coal. And when it was all over, the town died, which is pretty much what happened in Sagamore, Pennsylvania. Not much of it's left. There's a picture of Grandpa's tools and workbench. And this is one of my prized possessions. This is an actual service station Lionel manual, complete with quite a bit of pre-war through post-war up through 1969. So that is the Bible, at least to me, when it comes to repairing these things, getting them back on the rails. So, and again, our focus always was service. We've branched into sales, and as you'll see at the end of the presentation, we're branching into more things, modeling and other fun stuff. So here's a view of the workshop where I work. And I like this picture because it kind of shows you the breadth of what we do. You'll see early pre-war stuff in that picture. You'll see lots of post-war stuff in that picture. And you'll see modern stuff in that picture, Lionel and MTH. I still say the best transformer ever made was the Lionel ZW275. I know there's a debate on that, but it's my go-to. And it absolutely powers everything I need. But you guys can debate your power sources, obviously. And this is my good friend Jim Gates is the founder of the LCCA, Lionel Collectors of America. Yeah. This is a picture of his layout. I try to visit him once or twice a year, and he gives me his lists of trains that he needs. So I wanted to show this layout because it's pretty amazing. He's now in his late 80s, and he's still modeling and still building the buildings and still working on his train every day. So it's good to see him. And if you ever get a chance to go to Perry, Iowa, look him up. He always is happy to show off his layout. So, and also I wanted to let folks know, to lend a bit of credibility to the company, we are members of the LCCA. We're a member of TCA. We are authorized retailer for Lionel, and obviously MTH is no longer with us, but it may be coming back in some form or another. So we can still get our parts at this point. So as far as service, that's what we focus on is Lionel and MTH. Excuse me. A big part of what we've done and what we've gotten into is restorations. And a gentleman came to me last spring, asked if I could help him out. His grandfather was a pretty well-to-do businessman in Kansas City, and they owned a farm out in western Kansas. And he would fly his airplane in the 50s and 60s from Kansas City out to the farm every weekend, spend the weekend with his wife and kids, and then fly back to Kansas City to work during the week. Well, one weekend in 1970, he flew home, and unfortunately, someone broke into the house and murdered his grandparents, his grandfather and his grandmother, and then burnt the house down. His grandfather was a huge Lionel collector, and I would say he probably purchased the top of the line Lionel from when he was a child. So what happened was, at that point, the trains were stored in the attic. The house burnt down. They fell from the attic to the basement. They were found in the basement a few days later, obviously fire damaged and soaked with water. At which point my client's father packed them up, put them in boxes, and they never spoke about it again until my client's father passed away last year. And my client inherited the boxes. They had never seen the light of day since 1970. This is what they looked like when they got to us. So you can see some GG1s. That's a pre-war, I think, American Flyer in there, also a Lionel. Here's some more of the damaged parts that came to us. This is the chassis of a GG1. As you can see, quite a bit of fire damage in there. So we've been working on these fire restorations for the Anton family. And we've got a few of them done. We've got probably 20 or 30 we're still working on, but it's a painstaking, long process. When we get them, we take them completely apart, disassemble them. The shells are stripped by glass bead so that we can get all the debris and everything off of them. And then each individual part is cleaned, polished, and restored to its original condition, or at least as far as we can get it. These came out pretty good, as you can see. The motors, we try not to replace any of the parts. We try to clean and refurbish everything so it stays original. And you can see how some of that turned out. So what it went from to what it goes to, our main goal is to get these back on the rails and back to our customers, because in most instances, these trains are integral parts of families and their memories. And it's amazing to me how important these are to these folks. So again, the goal is to get them back on the rails. And I think we have done a pretty good job up till now, and we're still working on them. But here's some examples of what you saw before, and this is how they turned out.
That's just outstanding.
So again, we use train enamels and try to get as close to Lionel colors. Sometimes the customer wants a custom color like that. Maroon GG1 was a custom color that he requested. The rest of it we try to do as close to it as possible. We do all the rubber stamping. We have the same dies that Lionel used back in the day. So we can do silver and white rubber stamping that's authentic. Sometimes we have to use decals. Sometimes Lionel used decals, so it's not all bad. But we have a pretty good process. You'll notice the stripes on the GG1 and the lettering, the numbers, everything. Those are actual decals, but we have a pretty intense process to make them look like they're not decals, because that's the goal, obviously. There's only so much you can do in these restorations. You'll notice the black GG1 has a dent in the middle of the frame. Obviously, we can't take dents out, and Alan, the customer, didn't want the dents out. He wanted to have that, so he had a story to go with these trains as they get back home. So, which leads me to our next restoration project. We got a call last early spring from Amblin Studios in Hollywood, and they were putting together a movie, and they needed 6 complete full Lionel sets from 1952 with all the accessories, transformers, track, excuse me, everything. But the caveat was it had to look brand new because it was coming out of boxes, and the movie had to be brand new. The trains had to look brand new for the movie. So we started that process of going to auctions, going to eBay, calling friends, and we put together the sets, completely refurbished them. Obviously, 70-year-old boxes do not look brand new no matter what you do. So Amblin Studios and Universal Pictures actually remade the Lionel boxes for these trains, and we down to the Lionel wrapping paper was reproduced with the permission of Lionel, of course, for the movie. So coming out this November from Steven Spielberg, you'll see our trains and train sets in the movie called The Fableman. I can't show you the trains because the movie's not released yet. I have to live under their rules, I guess, but it is being released Thanksgiving weekend. So make sure you head to the local theater and check it out. And we are doing trains also for Warner Brothers HBO. If you know anything about them, they have done a remake of Perry Mason. Our trains are featured in season 2 of Perry Mason. Those trains are from the 1930s, and my grandfather's 1939 249E is actually starring in one of those episodes. So check it out if you have HBO or you can get to Perry Mason. Take a look at that. But it's an honor and a privilege to work with these folks. I've learned a lot to take something that's 70 years old and transform it into something that looks brand new and can pass the test of all of you in a movie. Hopefully we did a good job, but I'm sure you'll all let us know after the movie comes out and you see it. And then Jim asked me to talk about what's next, what we're working on, what we'd like to see, what we'd like to do, because a lot of the focus has always been about HO, at least in the last 30, 40 years. But we're still committed to third rail, low gauge stuff and promoting that. The good thing is a lot of folks will say, oh, the hobby's dying, the hobby's going away. I'm here to tell you, I would say 80% of our restoration business is coming from folks that their grandparents or their great grandparents gave them their trains through inheritance or whatever, and they want them running again. They want to build a layout and they want them fixed so that everything works. So it's heartwarming to me to know that there's a lot of folks out there that are still interested, still love the history, still see the value in what we all do. So if anybody tells you that the hobby's dying, it's not. It might be changing, it might be turning into something else, but it's still there. And I think the mystery and everything that goes with these models it's pretty interesting. So on that note, we are going to branch out into HO scale service. My little brother, Brent, is a HO guru. And I finally convinced him to join the team and start taking care of HO service. We get a lot of inquiries from HO folks. And up until now, I'm getting too old to look at something that small, and I really didn't have the interest. he does. So we're going to bring him on board, and he's going to be able to offer service and upgrades and those kind of things for folks and their locomotives. Something I'm very excited about, and the next two things go hand in hand. There's a local DAV chapter here in Phoenix in the Mesa area. And a gentleman contacted me several months ago that he wanted to get his Lionel refurbished and back running for his grandkids. So we did that, and I went and met with them and took it back to him, and found out that he's an amazing wood carver. And he makes hundreds and hundreds of toys, hand carved toys for kids at Christmas time. And they donate it through the local DAV. So we got to talking, and we thought, you know, we could take these Plasticville kits from the 50s and 60s and 40s too, and turn them into wood products and kits where people can assemble them just like they did the Plasticville. However, they're going to have a little more longevity, and they're not going to be so brittle. So he's working on that. He's taking some of the prototypes for Plasticville kits, turning them into wood projects that folks could purchase, have a little more longevity than the Plasticville stuff. Don't get me wrong, I love the Plasticville. I have a ton of it. There's a certain charm to it, but this is just a different option for folks. Excuse me. And then in the same idea, we talked about trestle bridges and bridges that can be custom built for folks' layouts. That there's not a lot of suppliers in this, and especially if you need something specific to your layout. And O gauge can get quite large, and O scale can be quite big and demanding of what you need. But he's an amazing artisan, and this is something that he wants to do. He's in his 80s. He has an amazing workshop out back, and I think the partnership between us could lead to something fun and, you know, give a product to folks that are looking for specific things for their layouts. So those are kind of some of the things that we're working on right now. Obviously, we're still doing the restoration, sales, and service. So that about wraps it up. If you want to find out more about our company, you can go to our website. You can email me direct at the email address there. And if y'all have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Gary, let me ask you this.
Sure.
What was it like working with Hollywood, if you will?
Honestly, it was easy. They were very amiable. Mr. Spielberg is an avid train collector. He actually grew up here outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And the story of The Fableman, which is the movie, is a rough telling of his childhood. And the way the Lionel trains came into focus or came into use for the movie is his parents for Hanukkah bought him a Lionel train set, and they'd give him one piece of the train set for Hanukkah each day of Hanukkah. So that's what's going to be in the movie is he's receiving this train set over the 10 days of Hanukkah, and then the trains will run. But it was kind of an honor because he knew his stuff. He knew exactly what he wanted. They were demanding as far as what everything looked like and the quality and all of that. But, you know, it was a lot of fun. And then the HBO and Perry Mason just kind of happened as a referral from Spielberg and Amblin. And we get inquiries often enough for this kind of stuff. So it just really depends on what they're looking for and if we can fulfill it. I don't get into standard gauge stuff too much. I don't have the room for standard gauge. So if they're looking for O gauge, and part of the fun of it was researching because they were very specific. They wanted to make sure it was true to life, true to the time period, that it was an actual set that Lionel produced, that everything that Lionel would have provided during that time was there. So the instruction manuals, the right smoke pellets, the correct transformers, the correct 3-rail, the O gauge. So it was kind of cool to go through that research with them, and then they had to get their approvals, and then it was back and forth. But to work with them was awesome. I would do it whenever they need it. I'll be there.
Based on do you see trains playing a more important role in Hollywood in the future than maybe it has recently?
I think my personal take on it is that folks our age, we grew up with Lionel trains, or we grew up with some sort of train, and the folks in our age group now are the ones that are making those movies and making those TV shows. And I think it's such a big part of being a kid for us back then that, yeah, I think they want to be true to the date. They want to bring back their own memories. There's an email from Steven Spielberg that he always wanted to crash a Lionel train set. And he knows that that's just not right, but he's always wanted to do it. And I think it's been a fixation of his for a long time, because if you saw the movie Super 8, it's all about trains. He directed that one too. So yeah, I don't think it's going away. I think everybody says the hobby's getting older, and folks are passing away, and it's changing, and it's not going to be around. But I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing so many young people that love it, that want it restored, that it's still a piece of their memories. And I can see it in my own granddaughters. I put a set together for them that was a post-war Lionel, just plain old Hudson set for their Christmas trees, and they absolutely love it. My littlest granddaughter, Charlotte, is 7, and she'll come over and work at the workbench and, take things apart and have to get right in there and see how everything works. I think there's just a fascination that's, yeah, it's not a cell phone, and it's not a computer, and it's not an iPad. But I think there's something wholesome, and it still draws kids to it, and adults.
One of the things that surprised me a little bit was we had some people on a show earlier from the TCA, and the TCA was talking about expanding their membership to include scale modelers. Not so much the collectors, but actual operators of Lionel scale models. And the TCA evidently feels that there's a role for the TCA in the scale modeling as well as in the collector market.
Mm-hmm. I think that's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you see that? I mean, do you feel that there is a role for the organizations like the TCA to become involved with the scale model railroader?
I think there absolutely is. And if you look around here, even in my home city in Phoenix, there's large railroad associations, you might want to call them, just state kind of things, that have huge layouts in large buildings, and you can join their club and go run your trains if you don't have a layout of your own. I don't think TCA is stupid. I think they know that there's a market out there. And I'm not saying it's all about money, but sometimes it is. You need to be more inclusive of what everybody's doing. There's always that, I don't know, friction between the scale guys, the O guys, the HO guys, the N guys. Everybody thinks they have the corner on them, on what needs to be done and how you need to do it. And I think the more groups like TCA realizes that it's just not like that everybody has a place, the better off we'll all be, obviously, and better off TCA will be. They've limited themselves throughout the years, so they need to be a little more introspective and welcoming to other groups. LCCA, obviously, it's all about Lionel, so they don't have that issue. Lionel's HO is not a big part of Lionel, as much as I'm sure Lionel wants them to be. When people say Lionel, they think O-gauge traditional Lionel.
Yeah.
And then with the loss of MTH, I mean, Atlas and Lionel, they all bought some of the tooling for the O-gauge stuff. If you've seen the Lionel catalog that just came out a few months ago, you can see a lot of the MTH tooling in that. You can see huge price increases in that. But I want to say something to the price. And Lionel gets a bad rap for being so expensive. Look back. First of all, Lionel's always been expensive. A train set in 1930 that was $90 was a lot of money in 1930. So it's really more different than what it is. So I don't know. I have my opinions about it all, but you probably don't need to hear them. I'm sure you all plenty of times before.
Well, the other thing too that I hear a lot is there is a market, and I think it's a growing market, of three-railers who like to run their trains through what I'll call scale scenery. And they're not interested necessarily in the old Lionel accessories. They like to run their three-rail trains as scale-like as they possibly can, maybe with an operating scheme rather than just running around in a circle. But they want them to be on a scale-looking layout. And I think that is a growing market in the O-scale arena.
I think it's a growing market, but I think the market's always been there. If you look at the old timers, Jim Gates, the founder of LCCA, he hand built everything on his layout. Very few of his things are the old Lionel accessories, which were actually standard gauge accessories. And Lionel didn't care that they were standard gauge, and they really didn't go with O gauge. They put them out there and people bought them anyway. So if you look at the old Lionel Gateman that comes out with the lantern, that's standard gauge. He would never fit in an O gauge train. Lionel didn't care. It was marketing. So I think that's always been there. The idea of wanting to model O gauge three rail more realistically. I think with 3D digital printing and other suppliers and so much more availability out there now, I think it's growing. I think it'll continue to grow. So yeah, I mean, I think you're spot on, Jim, but it's always been there. It really has. And if you look at those old timers layouts, they've been doing it for years.
I couldn't agree more. I started that way myself. I was a collector for years and belonged to every one of the associations for collectors as well as the NMRA. But it's funny to me now, as I look back on it, nobody really is interested in getting that kind of modeler in an association.
Right.
There is an O-Scale Kings Association, but if you're a Lionel operator, we don't want you.
Yeah.
It used to be, and I don't know how much it is right now because I haven't looked for a while, but it used to be that you weren't welcome in the NMRA because, quote, the NMRA is for scale model railroading. And three rail doesn't count, so we don't want you. So the three railer guy that wanted to run his train scale like and run through scale like scenery and everything except the three rail track really was as close as he could get it to a scale. There wasn't a place for him. He was kind of ignored.
And it really was like that. I mean, you had the LCCA, but they weren't into the modeling. It was all about the trains. And to some extent it still is. Or the old Lionel accessories. But they're, it's hard to find those outlets.
Absolutely. So, they were almost a fringe group that you had to find somebody else to find a friend, in effect, back then. And this wasn't that long ago. I was doing it in the 80s. But now I see the TCA wanting to go toward the scale guy. I see the NMRA, I think, opening up somewhat toward the tin plate guy. And I don't know where it's all going to go, but in my opinion, it's all modeling.
Yep.
And what they're trying to do is create something. And I think it's the creativity part that they have in common, and they're building something, and that they have in common. So I don't really exclude any of them. I know a lot of people do, but I don't exclude any of them from our show or from modeling, because I think all of them in their own way are successful modelers.
Absolutely. And I think that's a kudos to you for having that attitude. You know, in the whole grand scheme of things, it's all about the hobby. It's not life or death. Nothing horrible is going to happen if you're not accepted into a group. But, you know, why TCA didn't want to be involved with those folks, or other groups didn't want to be involved with folks, it just seems limiting to me. I don't see the justification or why you would want to do that when it's really all about the railroad. It's all about the trains. I wanted to give a shout out to Jeff Jordan, by the way. Jeff, $90 in 1930 would be $1,550 in 2022 dollars. So thanks for looking that up. I'm sure you Google that, Jeff.
Jim, I have to break in on one. This is David Vaughn, and I'm the president of the O-Scale Kings. Our doing business as name is now O-Scale Central, and we have no policy to exclude O-Scale three-railers who are working in scale. I have no idea what might have been the case years ago, but that's not the case now. And while we do look and scratch our heads at that third rail running down the center, we are very appreciative of the fact that there is an O-Scale three-rail community out there, because if it weren't for the three-railers, we would not have a lot of the good two-rail projects that we have. There are companies like Sunset Third Rail that divide their production between two and three rail. So we are very appreciative in that regard. I will say that most of our guys are two railers, and we regard the folks who are three rail scalers as being potential converts, but we also recognize them as being a legitimate part of the hobby. Now, I'm going to lay one on you that's going to blow your mind. I would not be surprised if there are efforts at cooperation between the NMRA and the TCA that come down the pike. You heard it here first. I think both of those organizations need some financial and organizational help. And I think there are some people inside there that may be having some discussions with the idea of a longer term cooperation. And I think the point here is that while there may very well have been, and maybe still is a bit, a big divide between tin plate and scale, a big divide between collectors and operators, I think it's more accurate at this point to think of it as a continuum, as Gary was saying. We are certainly not adversaries. I think we are all in it for the fun of the hobby. And I think going forward, you're going to see more cooperation, perhaps even between TCA and NMRA.
Well, David, I appreciate you clarifying that, because that is good information to have, and I really do appreciate you clarifying it as far as the O-Scale Kings is concerned. Gary, what are you going to get involved, do you think, in the O-Scale part of the business, or are you going to stay with what I'll call the old template side of the business?
Well, you've got three well trains that are either O gauge or they could be scale. So, I mean, we're involved with both of those, but we're still pretty involved with 3-rail. I know you guys are talking about converting us over to 2-rail, but you know, that's what I like. That's what I'm comfortable with. That's what I enjoy. As far as organizations, my home is LCCA, so what the TCA does or anybody else does doesn't really affect me.
Yeah.
To be honest, I can get some awesome scale stuff from MTH. Lionel's got some great scale stuff too now. Yeah, the old O gauge stuff is iffy, but you know, there's a place for that too. There's nothing like smelling the ozone burning, in my opinion, at Christmas time. I mean, that just smells like Christmas to me. So at this point, no, we're going to branch off into HO service and see how that goes. I'm always open to new things and learning new stuff. But honestly, my heart's with 3-rail, old Lionel, pre-war, post-war, whatever.
Gotcha. I totally understand. Anybody else have any questions for Gary or comments? I got one more for you. What do you think? What's the hardest restoration? Forgetting, I mean, I know the fires and all that. What's the hardest restoration that you've done?
I think all the restorations it's the same process, you know what I mean? You're still stripping them down, you got to take them apart, you got to put them back together and try to be as true to the original as you can. I think the hardest restorations are when emotions get involved and the families are, you know, distraught because grandpa just passed away or dad just passed away and I really want these to work. This is all I have left. I think those are the hardest restorations only because you're cognizant of how much this thing means to this family or to these folks. And, you know, don't mess anything up because if you break something, you're messing with, you know, 50 years of somebody's family history.
Right.
So those are the hardest because that's where the pressure is. You're dealing with family's memories. It's not just a piece of die cast and some electrical wire. So process is the same. I think it just depends on the circumstance. And when you're dealing with family loss and family memories, those are the tough ones because you don't want to get it wrong. You want it to be perfect every time.
Absolutely, I understand. Well, thank you so much for being here this evening. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this and to sharing your story with us. I really do appreciate it, Gary. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim, and good luck to you all. If you need anything, you know how to get all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you,
And
sir.
go see those movies.
Absolutely. Won't miss them.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's pretty much it for tonight. And we survived another show. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. It's our YouTube channel is New Tracks Modeling. If you have not subscribed to our website, please do so. It's newtracksmodeling.com. I hope that you enjoyed tonight. Most importantly, I hope you learned something. I hope you'll come back again. Hope you'll tell your friends. And thank you so much for being here this evening. And now I'd like to turn it over to Clark Cooney for our after show. Clark, welcome.
I haven't seen him on here, Jim.
Well, since Clark didn't show up tonight, then I will handle the welcome, the after show. So, David, I'll start with you. David Vaughn, I'll start with you. That was good information that you passed along because that's, I had never heard that before, and I appreciate you correcting me.
I think David's gone too.
Okay. Anybody have anything they'd like to talk about in the after show?
Oh, boy.
Clark always asks if anybody is new. Is anybody new that hasn't been here before?
What's for dinner?
What's for dinner, Ted?
Ted's not here either.
Oh, boy. We're in good shape tonight.
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do with the after show then, guys. We're going to stop it right now as far as the recording is concerned. And then if anybody wants to stay on for another half an hour or whatever, then you're most welcome. Thank you, Pat, for doing that. And the show is over.
Thanks, Jim.
This has been an interesting show.
We had quite a few people.
I got a comment.
Yes, sir.
We recently had a one-day show, which we call the Jamboree, and our speaker was a fellow from Lionel who's involved with their production. And the bottom line is that he says the hobby is not dying either. So that just reinforces what was said tonight.
I'm one of the things that I am hearing, I have no idea whether this is true because I don't have any way of verifying it. It may just be, so much gossip. I don't know. But I have heard from two different manufacturers that their sales are more to Lionel 3-rail than they are to O-scale modelers.
That's true.
That's true.
I think that makes logical sense, right? It's because basically the non-scale modelers tend to go to that, and people tend to buy them for their kids, etc.
Yeah.
And when people go to scale, I think from O, a lot of them end up going to HO because of the availability and the size. I think that's the difference. There's no HO version of a child's toy train set.
It's easier to run the Lionel when you're a kid than it is when you're,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure Buddy remembers that Lionel train set they had and how they had fun with it, trying to make it do things it's not supposed to do and all kinds of stuff like that we learned model railroading from. And we learned a lot from that. And we learned, some of the stuff isn't really scale, and then we want to get into scale. I have a very good friend that is into 3-rail Lionel, but everything around that is all scale. All its buildings, its trees, scenery, it's all scale. It looks fantastic. It really does. And it does ballast and everything like that. So, and some of the stuff he's buying for his 3-rail is actually very well detailed, and it's to scale. So, it's pretty cool. The only difference is he's got 3-rail Lionel instead of old scale.
I'm working on a show for later this year called O-Gauge/Scale Modeling Today. I have only found one person who wants to be on that panel. Now, I know that there are a lot of modelers out there. And I think the reason that I'm having trouble finding is because, as I said earlier to Gary, the feeling of an O-Gauge scale modeler is nobody wants it. Just go away and do your thing, and that's fine, but you're not this, you're not that. For a long time, an O-Gauge 3-rail modeler was told by a lot of different people that they couldn't participate in the NMRA's achievement program, which is wrong. They can. They're most welcome to. I know the first modeler, and he has a lower number MMR than I do. He was the first one that got his MMR based on his Lionel modeling. Now, he was a scratch builder and he built beautiful models, but that's how he got his MMR. But you go to Lionel people and they say, well, there's no point in trying to learn anything because, you know, what can we do with it? No one wants us to enter the contest. You know, if we can't enter the contest, why build it? You know, if there are models out there, you know, we can look, we can get some cardboard and, you know, we can look up Frank Ellison and how he built his models. We can build them like that. And for a long time, you know, since I was one of those guys, I know that, you know, you found your own friends that would tolerate you. Because if you were a 3-rail guy, you were a 10-plate modeler, that's it.
I'm just going to tell you, my friend has a 10-wheeler with steam, the whole bit, smoke and sound and that. You know what? That thing is really well done to scale. So what's the big difference? The big difference is that he's got a pickup in the center underneath where you can't see it. And it runs on Lionel 127 true rail. And other than that, the thing is beautiful. So I'm seeing this kind of stuff and say, wow, that is a huge difference from when we were kids and we had Lionel toy-like stuff. It's not so much toy-like anymore. It's really getting to good scale. But
So
it
by
will
the-
swing around those tight corners.
If you go to Sunset and look at their brass locomotives, they're almost all built in both 2-rail and 3-rail and O. They
Okay.
cover both markets. So, you know, and you get the same, I mean, if you look at an engine, you know, the upper detail is going to be the same. The differences are a little bit in the drivetrain and maybe how the front trucks can swing or the back trucks can swing. But if you look at the, you know, brass built up locomotive shell and the boiler and the details on the boiler and everything at that level above the wheels, it's all the same on either model.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just a difference anyway. I tell you what, if you guys are interested, I'll share something I thought was pretty cool. This was actually last weekend. We had our regional convention out here, and it was up north in Marin County. And I don't know, has anybody ever seen this model?
Yes.
So this is it's almost fabled Sierra West sawmill model, which is actually a model of the Sturgeon's Mill.
Yep.
That's in Sebastopol, California. So we had our convention, and one of the things that was set up was on Saturday afternoon, had some open time, and there was a trip up, and they ran the sawmill. And I didn't take a lot of pictures of the sawmill outside because I figured everybody's seen the sawmill outside. This is underneath the sawmill, which is actually where the steam engines are. And they're not up above, they're actually underneath, and they feed up through. The thing here that I found incredibly interesting is if you look right here where can you see my mouse pointer there?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
This is actually a governor, a speed governor.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen this before, it's really interesting to watch it in motion. So basically it's weights that spin out and they're connected to 2 sets of rods. One goes to the bottom to a thing that's actually fixed but rotating, and the others go to the top. And then there's a rod through that goes through this bottom and down here. And this is the steam valve right here. So what happens is as the blades slow down, this thing slows down, then balls basically, because it's a triple force goes down, as the speed goes down, the balls coming closer, they push this rod up and accelerate the engine. And it was really amazing to watch. When you're standing here underneath, they're cutting a 3-foot diameter log up above. And as they run it in, you can just watch the engine slow down as the torque builds and then actually speed back up as this control. And you can really watch it. It was pretty cool to actually see that there. This is kind of another view of it from the side. So there were 2 steam engines underneath. There's one here that runs this, and then there's another one, smaller one over here. What's also interesting is that it's not a bandsaw.
No.
It's actually 2 rotary blades. So kind of cool to see how they cut through and slide those through and cut the logs off. I took a few pictures of that. This is the cut table, and over here is this is actually the cross cutter that does the board cuts, the side cuts. And this is actually a planer back here that's actually not working right now. And this was interesting. They said basically about every 4 hours, you have to go around and sharpen all the teeth. That was just a picture of something. But anyway, I thought you guys would find that kind of interesting as some pictures of how it actually works. It was interesting that a lot of the actual power stuff is under the deck where you never see it. So the next time somebody shows you one of those and talks about how they modeled it, you can ask to see underneath it and see the steam engine.
Mhm. Cool.
Well, Larry, you've got that cool filter going on there.
Who, me? I'm sitting in the dark and I'm getting all the light off my screen. A little scary, isn't it?
Spooky.
It's a little bit eerie. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I was wondering how you guys all had tans.
Change of the Addams family.
Bud, when I was going to say, when you were talking about, you had been talking to some people about in Lionel and how the hobby is not dying, and I said I could concur because I saw all the stuff you were buying in Chicago.
Hi, Phil.
Well, there's one thing that that hasn't been talked about is Markland. That's considered a three rail, but instead of having a rail, they have like posts along the bottom. There is a YouTube channel called
Stud Rail.
Stud work?
Stud Rail.
Oh, Stud Rail.
Yeah, there's one guy I've been sort of getting watching. He has it set up more as sort of like a let's see, about 6 tracks that just run on a loop. That's what his style is. And the interesting thing is he's a former German teacher. And one of the things that keeps him from not buying everything is that the trains that he buys is trains that he has had actually ridden on. And so he has all these different trains and all that. The name of the channel is Anthony Dodge, the Outsider. I think it's something along those lines. But he does basically does live streams and all that, and does a lot of interaction with the chat and everything, and that's most of the stuff he does is not really not really scale, except for the one station. There's one station that he really likes in Germany, and he's trying to reproduce that.
Another good Markland YouTube channel is Markland of Sweden. He does a lot of excellent modeling work. A lot of it is based around his Markland layout, but his scenery work is absolutely outstanding, and he's got a different way of doing water that really needs a good look at. It's not the usual way of doing water.
Toilet paper water.
Yep, no resin involved. So it's worthwhile a look. As far as O-scale goes, Jim, would you be prepared to look at some stuff from Australia on 7mm scale, which is 1/43 scale O standard?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I would.
Okay. I'll see what photos I can dig up.
I would love to see some of it. In fact, one of the card manufacturers that I found in Great Britain, his is in 143. I've built a couple of his.
Yeah.
And you take a look at them. I mean, unless you're a purist, and I hate to say it, I'm not a purist. unless you're a purist, 143 or 148 doesn't bother me particularly.
Okay. The 7 mil O gauge guild has been running since the 1930s.
Yeah.
In the UK. They have got a branch out in Australia as well. I'm actually affiliated with the 7 mil group in New South Wales. So 7 mil to the foot. And my current railway is 7 mil to the foot on HO tracks representing 2 foot narrow gauge. I'm using 16.5 mil versus the true dead scale 14 mil.
Yeah.
Track gauge.
I'd be very interested in seeing how you're doing that. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll see what I can put together.
Okay. What I've seen of the modelers in Australia when I was there years ago, but when I was there and the layouts I saw and the modelers that I saw and what they were doing, I mean,